Someone else I think we're both excited for in his return is Jai Paul. He just released two new tracks last week, but he also released, he titled it Leak 0413 Bait Ones, which was a working title for an album he was working on before, like the title of the album might suggest. His tracks were leaked and then circulated pretty broadly. And this led to a lot of different issues for him. You know, he's a UK guy, Indian descent, and he talks in a couple interviews about how this led to a lot of different mental health issues for himself, that he kind of moved away from music during this time because he just felt like something had been taken from him, which it absolutely had. You know, that these tracks he was working so hard on were then, you know, like out of his control, were being circulated and spread around before they were even finished.
Bandcamp.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of crazy like that. I guess I'll spoil my review. I really liked this album, and a lot of the tracks on this I found incredibly interesting and awesome to listen to. But I can't even imagine that feeling of like working so hard for something like this and like crafting this and trying to make this thing that feels so, I don't know, personal, and trying to perfect it and then just having it thrown out there without like taking out your control. It must have been awful.
Yeah, and I think when he put this out legitimately on streaming, I think a few samples are removed from the old leaks just to clear it for everything. But when he put this out and he left, you know, his really first public comment in years, and you know, I didn't even think of this, but he put this out on the same sequencing that the leak was in. So he didn't even get to decide the sequence. The sequence is already determined because this is the sequence everyone was used to that had heard his music when it leaked. And it's really an interesting story about like, the relationship between an artist and their art, and I guess the media's relationship to a lesser extent as well. I mean, when that leaked in 2013, it made Pitchfork and Guardian's top album lists of the year. It wasn't an official release or even sanctioned by the artist. Yet lots of places still covered it. So very interesting story. And, you know, if you dig back, I mean, I won't lie, I was not up on Jai Paul at the time, but like he's like a MySpace discovery, you know, product of the blog era, truly. And being just this experimental pop, you know, we'll get into actual music, but just fascinating story. And hearing now that he's been working with his brother, and they have been signing some unknown artists and putting out music, and definitely coming out to a slow trickle at the Paul Institute, I think they're calling it. But definitely someone you hope you'll hear more of, because I mean, I think he's just 30 years old now, and quite the enigma. And good still also a hype creator for a guy who most people only ever heard demo quality music from him. So I guess it's, you know, you can take it either way. Is he overrated because of the lack of output? Is he like a Jay Electronica, or is he actually truly this, you know, landmark figure that makes, or made at least at one point, like truly important music? You know, it's fascinating stuff. And I also really liked the project as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, and maybe that's something we can come back to when we talk about the two new tracks he released. I do want to just touch on a couple of the tracks from this album, because I think there are going to be a lot of people who are finding this that, just like us, weren't on it in 2013 and may not have been aware of what was going on. Anything that really stands out to you in terms of the tracks here, or that you really, really like?
Right. So I think some of the negatives with the tape is just that, as most of these songs have as an addendum now, most of the track names, that they say unfinished. And a lot of these songs truly just sound like demos. They're half an idea. They're not fully completed songs. They're short run times, all that. And even if you appreciate the ambition some of those songs are bringing, at the end of the day, they're not complete ideas, and usually not mixed that well. I think XL Recordings, his label he's been on this whole time, said that they actually had an engineer comb through all his files to find the highest quality masters that matched the leaks. So they didn't actually try and change anything, really. They just tried to find the best versions they already had. They didn't remix anything. So at the end of the day, some of these songs just aren't only going to sound so good. So I don't even really pay attention to them, because again, we're reviewing a demo project that just got legitimized. But the songs that did stand out to me, some of them are still technically unfinished, uh, really stand out. Like obviously people know BTSU, which was his
Yeah.
debut single. I think that song came out beginning of the decade before the leaks happened and stuff. That song got a lot of attention. I think Zane Lowe really evangelized for it at the time. Jasmine, his second single. And again,
Hmm.
people know that the song as Jasmine Demo, you know,
Yeah.
another one. But I really liked Zion Wolf theme, Genevieve,
Yep.
Crush, which of course is a cover of sorts. Even
Yeah.
100,000. Like I like a
Hmm.
lot of these tracks, but I know you're a big fan of track two, right?
Yeah, Straight Out of Mumbai, which is one of the only songs on here that doesn't have unfinished or demo or instrumental on it. So this feels like an idea that he actually really was able to kind of hone in and perfect before it was leaked in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this song is just absolutely infectious, and the way that it blends in, um, obviously Indian music influence with a little bit more like poppy techno sound. There's this part near the end where it brings in a an Indian singer vocal sample, and I think it is just like it pushes it to another level in terms of how good the song is, because it's really good until you hit that point and then you're like, wow, this is seriously like pulling in influence that you don't hear in most popular music in the United States and even in the UK. So I thought that was just brilliant. Um, Probably my second favorite track on this, which is really funny to say because it's literally only 30 seconds, and I think the beat is only in for like maybe 15. Is Raw Beat or Raw Beat? Sorry, I was reading that wrong. That just the vocal or the spoken word at the beginning and then the way that the beat drops in, I want him to finish that song so badly. I don't want the disclosure remix of it, which I know we'll probably get at some point, but I really think that song's great. You mentioned 100,000, which was fantastic. Chicks also I thought was great. There's there's a lot of potential here. um and I mentioned he dropped these other two songs, "Do You Love Her Now" and on June 1st. And I think those songs are both very good. And I think he still is displaying that potential. He uses audio levels and kind of cutting in and out of sounds, to create this like almost trancy, like floating through air type feeling on a lot of his tracks. And I think it's too early to judge who he is as an artist because obviously he's stepped away for a while and hasn't been releasing things. But I think if Bait Ones and these two new songs are an indication, I think he's going to be an incredibly influential producer, recorder in the next, I don't know, decade probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny. I didn't actually know of BTSU when it was blowing up, but I had heard Dreams Money Can Buy, the Drake freestyle over BTSU,
Mm.
and just was
Yep.
totally unaware of the sample in 2011.
Yeah.
Kind of embarrassing in retrospect. Um,
Eh,
yeah, it seems like his brother um, is the much more
Rich
public.
Paul, right?
Yeah, Rich Paul. He also represents some basketball players. He seems like the much more public facing figure
Mhm.
of the two. But we also know of him working with more people. It's funny, like I think it was 2 years ago, Jay Paul, his brother, were photographed with Miguel in the studio for Miguel's 2017 album, and I think Jay Paul's brother was the one who's really doing most of the work. But again, that's like because there's the cult of personality around him. It's like, oh look, there he is. Are we gonna get new music?
Yeah.
And now we have like I think last year, like the Paul Institute, like there's photos of them with hard hats on because they bought this property for their incubator of sorts. And it's just really fascinating the combination of the wildly experimental, influential, ambient dance pop music. It's very hard to genre classify, I guess, but combine that with the influence of him and his brother AK. It's fascinating stuff. And the new songs that he released, like an official double single, "Do You Love Her Now" and I didn't like those quite as much as some of the truly wild shit off the
Hmm.
demo tape, but I'll take anything at this point.
Yeah, I would suspect there's probably an album coming at some point. So I'm gonna have my eyes out for that, my ears out for that.
Mhm.
Jai Paul will have a couple, at least one of his tracks on our best of playlist. So again, Nostalgia Best of 2019 on Spotify. Follow that.